Hello and welcome to our weekly dialogue with Helga Zepp-LaRouche. She is the founder and chairwoman of the Schiller Institute. It's January 24th, 2024. I'm Harley Schlanger and I will be your host today. You can send your questions or comments to Helga. Send them to us at questions@schillerinstitute.org, or you can post them on the YouTube chat page. I'm sorry we're starting a little bit late, but we had a technical problem to resolve, so let's get right into the questions. Helga, the title of today's webcast is Dying Tricks of a Dying System, and that provoked our first question from a viewer in Texas. He writes, "What makes you so sure the system is dying? It seems as if they can keep kicking the can down the road. I agree with what Lyndon LaRouche said years ago that after 1971, they will go for a global fascist order. But will that keep their system alive? And if so, how?"
Well, I think the freak out on the side of the Western oligarchy is gigantic because very lately they realize that there is a huge blowback to their policies, ranging everything from the sanctions against Russia, the weaponization of the dollar, the continuous mechanisms of the colonialism in the form of conditionalities and various other factors. So you have right now the clear emergence of a new system. And, apart from what we discussed in previous shows, the new development is there was a very huge meeting in Kampala in Uganda, where 3,000 delegates from 120 countries, first of the non-aligned movement, but also of the G77, met, and they had a Kampala declaration in which they basically declared how they uh, intend to organize the world order. This is a really big development. It means that the countries of the global south, who have long become the global majority, are intending to end a system of 600 years of colonialism. And I think that the effect of that will be that either the Western oligarchy, who has an incredible bubble on unpayable derivative on which they are sitting, and it's just a question of time. You are right; they always have a way of moving some tricks in the system, but there is an end to the road inside. And the only question which should concern anybody who is in their right mind is, can we convince the enough sections of the so-called North or West in time to realize that it would be in their best interest to cooperate with that vast majority of mankind. President Museveni of Uganda said it very precisely. He said, "Why do the global actors not realize that it would be in the interest of everybody to work with the global south, and that everybody would have prosperity, and that everybody would profit much more from that than if the vast majority of the world population is kept in poverty?" Now, there are two possibilities. Either this transformation in such a new order whereby the countries of the global south are accepted as equal partners in a new system of joint cooperation, of win-win respect for each other, either that transformation occurs peacefully and soon, or else there is the absolute danger that the geopolitical confrontation which exists right now between NATO on the one side and mainly Russia and China on the other side will lead to a global catastrophe. I personally do not see a third way, because either we can act as the human species based on reason, or the interest of a few will ruin the world for everybody. So I think one way or another the system will come to an end, not only for financial reasons, but simply because the dynamic now in motion will mean a decision one way or another will be on the table fairly soon.
Now we have a question from Spain from Manuel Miguel Enrique, who says, "Good morning from Spain. I would like to ask if a third world war is inevitable, since all bridges of understanding seem to have been broken."
No, it's not. If it were, I would not sit here in a relatively optimistic mood. If it would be inevitable, I think, then the universe would not be the way it is. There is free will in the universe that is inbuilt in the lawfulness of the universe, and there's nobody who has said this more precisely than Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, who, as you may know, spoke of the best of all possible worlds in which we are living. And, this was not what Voltaire tried to make out of it, as a sarcastic attack. But what it simply meant is that the universe is built in such a way that every force of evil triggers the potential for an even much larger force for the good. That can also be expressed in a different way. You can say that the universe is organized in an anti-entropic way, that, basically the development from the biosphere into the noosphere, as Vladimir Vernadsky would have said it, that tendency is increasing, and that therefore the more the cognitive element in the world is gaining the domination over simply biological processes, the higher the chances is that, indeed we will reach a new era of civilization. Now, this question of free will, however, does not mean that it's a determinism. It's not some histomat or diamat, the short for historical materialism or dialectical materialism. It simply means that, that if enough people of goodwill are mobilizing for a positive vision where humanity should go, the likelihood that we will be able to accomplish that is extremely high. So it's largely a subjective factor. It's not an objective conditionality, which is why we need you to get active with us so that we can put the solutions on the table. The solutions being especially, the need for a new security and development architecture, which takes into account the interest of every country on the planet. So it's not inevitable, but it does require a lot of work and the mobilization of a lot of good people.
Well, there are a lot of questions that are of a similar sort about on the one side, the positive developments, the German farmers, the South African court case, and on the other side, the insanity of the latest Ramstein meeting. So let me start with a question on the South African development, the International Court of Justice. Speaking of free will, do you have a thought on how and when the ICG will rule? And the same person asks, what kind of twisted logic is behind Germany's motion of support for Israel at the ICJ?
Well, I think, I don't know. I hope that it will occur, the decision of a contemporary, of a temporary action will come soon, because every day is obviously of extreme importance for the people who are in this unbelievable situation in Gaza. I don't know. I don't know what is wrong with Germany. I mean, there are now so many open letters, by concerned Jewish people to the German government, by parliamentarians, by all kinds of people. I mean, it is it is an unfortunate development that, obviously Germany has taken the guilt for the Holocaust, which happened 80 years ago. That is obviously a good thing, because some other countries who have committed crimes which are, maybe not exactly the same, but also quite incredible, have not taken responsibility for these crimes. So I think it is laudable that Germany has, to a very large extent, worked through, what the National Socialists committed. But if you then are blind to what is going on around you, it is definitely a tragic thing. And, I'm afraid that Germany will be isolated internationally as a result of it. You already saw that the president of Namibia uh, came out and said, "While this is the third genocide Germany is, in this case, condoning after the genocide against the Herero in Namibia at the beginning of the 20th century. Then the second Holocaust was or the second genocide was the Holocaust." And now Germany is, basically closing its eyes on what is going on in Gaza. Now, I think this has to be reversed. I think that all the legal professionals in Germany should intervene, and because if you study the arguments made in Den Haag, if you're in any case objective, you can only come to the conclusion that there is, the argument by South Africa is very well documented, and the counter argument by Israel is very poor. Now, I think that the effect will be what we see already. Uh, Artists from the global south are already quitting. Uh, Somebody has pulled out a movie from the Berlinale. There were other cultural events cancelled, and I'm quite concerned, that this is just the beginning, where the very good reputation Germany used to have because of its innovation power, because of its many discoveries, because of its economic powers, because of the image associated with made in Germany for decades in the post-war period, and especially naturally for its great cultural contribution to world history. Germany had an extremely positive image among many, many countries in the world, and I know that from many, many personal discussions. That is all being lost. And if Germany does not shape up, it will be, together with the United States and the British, a pariah under the States, and it will be very, very difficult to undo such a development. I think this is a tragedy, and I can only say, there is still time to correct it, but it has to occur really quickly.
We have two more questions on Germany. Obviously, Helga, people want to know what you're thinking on this. One is from a German who now lives in Thailand, who asks the question, by what authority can the German government agree to send military helicopters, as reported from the latest Ramstein meeting, and possibly long-range missiles to Ukraine? Doesn't there have to be a vote in the Bundestag? Has there been a vote? And then the second question is from Ohio. Someone says, congratulations to the German farmers. Any chance that the American farmers might join them and drive tractors to Washington to protest U.S. policies as they did in the late 1970s?
Well, concerning the first question, I think that what happens always is that Austin calls his Ukraine group in Ramstein as if Ramstein would be part of the United States. To my knowledge, he never asks anybody if he can do that. He just does it. I mean, it's just a symptom that right now, unfortunately, Germany is a 100% colony of the Anglosphere. I wouldn't say US, but I would say Anglosphere, because it is the Anglo-American thrust, which, the German government is just I think it's the old principle of NATO, which Lord Ismay, the first NATO General Secretary, so famously said, that the purpose of NATO is to keep the Russians out, to keep the Americans in, and to keep the Germans down. And unfortunately, the present crop of so-called leadership in Germany doesn't have the backbone to defend German interests. So, the only hope I see, and that comes to the second question, is the fact that for the very first time since a long time, large segments of the German population are taking to the streets, and in this case, in the case of the farmers and the truckers and the craftsmen and the bakers and the many other groupings which are now sharing, they are fighting for the very existence of agriculture, of transport, of large sections of the Mittelstand who hopefully will join at some point. Because Germany right now is in a free fall, not least as a result of the sabotage of Nord Stream pipelines, the high energy prices, and you have a situation right now where people in Germany are fighting for their existence, not only materially, but people are really upset. And I just find it incredible what happened, because the big farm demonstrations started on the 8th of January. In Monday, on the 8th, they had this incredible demonstration of 100,000 tractors. The whole country was practically paralyzed, but it was peaceful, it was well coordinated. And then what happens? 2 days later, on the 10th of January, all of a sudden, a press story breaks where a so-called corrective group of journalists, this is a so-called investigative journalists, they are financed by all kinds of hedge funds and foundations and whatnot. They come out with a completely fabricated story that a group of right-wingers would have met on the 25th of November in Potsdam, close by the Wannsee hotel where the Wannsee conference took place, implying that this is in the same tradition. And they would have decided on a plane to remigrate a lot of people who are in Germany for asylum. And this would be the big secret plot which they discovered. Now, I took the effort to compare what was reported by this corrective group, by some press coverage, and all I could find is that some of these people apparently quoted from a book from some Austrian author who is a part of the identity movement. The book is out in the 4th edition, where he proposes to retransport a lot of foreigners basically back to their own home countries where they came from. If you compare the text which was used, it's identical with what Scholz said. Scholz, the chancellor, on a cover story of Spiegel said, big offensive for retransport of asylum seekers. The same language. There was, the whole thing was a phony, but because it was published with such a big drama, naturally, the churches, the trade unions, and the parties called out the people for large demonstrations. And there were indeed, hundreds of thousands of people in the streets last weekend. And it completely overshadowed, or it was designed to overshadow, the demonstration of the farmers. Now, this is really a very strange story. First of all, why, if that was such a big scandal, why was it canned and not published for 6 full weeks? Why was it published exactly 2 days after the 100,000 tractors were in the streets? And, furthermore, why are the same people not going out in the streets to demonstrate against the push for war? NATO general, the Admiral Rob Bauer of the NATO military command came out, which was big in the Bild Zeitung headlines. Bild Zeitung is the big tabloid in Germany. We have 36 hours to prepare. Everybody should get batteries, water, because if there is a Russian assault, the first 36 hours are crucial. People are driven into a fear reaction. Everywhere they are speaking about, the coming war with Russia in 2 years, in 18 months, in 5 years, but in any case, as if it would be certain that this is coming. Now, this is indeed creating the danger of a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you keep doing that, I'm afraid the conflict will happen. But, it is a complete orchestration, and the population, I must really say, there are so many reasons to demonstrate, to support the farmers, because they, produce the food which is the existence for everybody. People should support the farmers. There is reason to demonstrate against the cutting of all social programs, that there is no infrastructure, no repair of the schools. There are many reasons to demonstrate, but to fall for this phony operation, it really shows the population needs to be a little bit smarter. And I think the German population right now, but I spoke with some people who participated in this phony demonstration, and they said they were really not there to protest against the AfD, because the AfD is not saying much different than what Scholz and the CDU are saying. So it's a complete dog and pony show. But the people were there because they are all upset and they wanted to know what the other people were upset about. So I just wanted to say that, and I think it's extremely good that in this case, many American farmers have already sent support telegrams to the German farmers, and I would hope that becomes more. There are also now nationwide demonstrations announced in Italy, Spain, France, Holland. So it is absolutely spreading. And, the farmers in Germany have said that they will not stop until the government, basically agrees to their demands.
Now, Helga, we have a couple questions about the confrontation or the pending confrontation, so called, with Russia. From London, we have a question: with elections coming up in Russia in March, isn't it likely that the West will launch some kind of false flag provocation to destabilize Russia as part of a Maidan-style color revolution to do a regime change against Putin? And from Belgrade, we have the question: the person writes that there are moves toward a color revolution against the Vučić government in Serbia. Isn't it likely something similar will be launched against Putin?
Well, I think that there is the reason to be concerned about that, because there is this organization called, I always forget their name, it's something like Post Russia something or other. And they have organized a lot of conferences already in the United States, in Philadelphia, in Washington, in other places. And they are advertising to cut Russia into 40 different entities. And they have also, some people apparently on the ground in Russia who have done sabotage actions, which they call, freedom fighters or something like that. So there is reason to be concerned, but I do not think that will be successful, because, I think that the larger part of the Russian population is backing what Putin is doing and the present government. And, it's always very difficult to have a complete insight, into another country. You can only go by, certain parameters. And I think, if I look at the larger picture, the strategic situation, and how, for example, the countries of the global south are relating to not only China, but also to Russia, I think that they have chosen the side from which they believe they have a better deal, a better friendship, and a better cooperation. And I think the real game is the big one. It is not just inside Russia in the coming election, but I think it is the question: can the forces in the world work together quickly enough to get us peacefully into a new era? Because we are sitting on a complete powder keg, and I think the fact that the bulletin of the American scientists, they just reset the Doomsday Watch again, which they do every January, and they left it at 90 seconds to midnight. And the danger is really big. So therefore, I cannot completely, deny the possibility that such a thing could happen, but I doubt extremely much that it would be successful.
Helga, we have a couple more questions. I know you're very busy, but there's one from Dahlia in the United Kingdom who asked the question. She writes: as the US and the United Kingdom escalate wars in Ukraine and Gaza and now in the Red Sea, It seems they expect the European Union to support them, to pick up the pieces and pay the bill. Do you agree? What is the European Union policy on these things?
Well, I think it does not represent the interest of its member states, that's for sure. I think, it's now with Trump having won the New Hampshire primary, he's ahead of Nikki Haley. She has not yet quit, but it's very likely that the donors, the money bags behind Nikki Haley, will stop investing in a failed project. So Trump could very likely be the next president. And there is a big panic among the Western elites in Europe that that the United States would stop supporting Ukraine. This could happen much before the election date, and then Europe will be left with paying all of the damage which was created, and that is a big, big, big burden. And the same goes naturally if Europe is allowing itself to be drawn into the conflict around Southwest Asia. It can only amplify the problem. The problem is that we have only the beginning of movements in Europe who are fighting for the interest of the member states. And obviously, the more people start to really think through that the most important issue right now is that we do something to keep world peace. Because if it comes to nuclear war, everything will be lost. If it comes to nuclear war, there will be nuclear winter afterwards. No life on the planet will be left, and no historian will be left to investigate who was guilty that this happened. And that is my worst fear, because I think we are very close to that. And any expert who is thinking clearly and sees that the present crop of politicians, they are playing with things which previous generations were extremely aware of the danger. They made all kinds of treaties, disarmament negotiations. They were conscious. But the present crop of politicians, they go out and they yell into the room, ruin Russia, ruin Russia. They have no knowledge about the history, about the strategic situation, nor are they concerned other than their little ego. And I think that is the biggest danger. So we need a lot of educated, thinking state citizens who start to become active. Because if we had a large, number of people being educated, educating themselves about, the military, the economy, cultural issues, diplomacy, this could not happen.
Well, Helga, I have one final question for you from David, who goes back to what you said earlier about Leibniz. And he asks, was Leibniz responsible for the language in the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence in the United States? And he said, often John Locke is referenced. What is Leibniz's role?
Well, Leibniz was clearly the influence, and not Locke, in the Declaration of Independence and naturally the Constitution, because Benjamin Franklin, for example, had extensive networks in Europe who transmitted this influence. And the very formulation in the Declaration of Independence, the inalienable rights for life, freedom, and happiness, is Leibniz. It's not property, Locke. So I think Leibniz was a beautiful soul who was deeply cultured. He had a vision about how peacefully nations of the different continents could live together. And the influence of Leibniz should be revived both in the United States and in Eurasia, because he had a very, very advanced conception about how countries could work together for the benefit of all of them.
And of course, John Locke was interested in the benefit of the City of London traders who were just beginning to Thank you for joining us. We'll be back again next week. Do you have any parting words to leave people?
Get active with us. This is not a period where you should sit on the fence, because this is a period where, the courageous action of individuals working together for a good plan can indeed shape history to the better.